I went to Venezuela for Quake relief. What I found blew me away. Before I traveled to Venezuela to help with earthquake relief, I had certain expectations. As the leader of Operation Blessing, a humanitarian organization, I knew most of what Americans heard about Venezuela came from headlines. Years of stories about political turmoil, economic collapse, and government dysfunction had quietly painted a picture in my mind. I expected a country running on empty, a harsh welcome, and suspicion. But what I actually found was something else entirely. I discovered one of the most beautiful countries I've ever set foot in. More than that, I met some of the most resilient, generous people imaginable. Community after community, I watched neighbors caring for neighbors, even when they had almost nothing themselves. Taxi drivers drove for 10 hours just to volunteer on search and rescue teams at Ground Zero. Families who had lost their own homes showed up to clear rubble from someone else's. Churches opened their doors wide, and their volunteers worked until 2 a.m., distributing emergency supplies and tens of thousands of hot meals we prepared in our industrial kitchen. The first responders were just outsiders. The vast majority were Venezuelans. Witnessing all of this unfold forced me to confront a difficult question. Before our team even deployed, I heard people question whether Americans should help Venezuela at all, given its politics. Some suggested the government brought these troubles on itself. Others simply couldn't separate the humanitarian crisis from political headlines. I understand those concerns, I truly do. But after standing among families who had lost everything, I can tell you with certainty, we must separate politics from people. The children sleeping outside because their homes collapsed didn't create their country's political problems. The parents sifting through debris for family photos aren't responsible for government policy. The volunteers giving their time to help strangers aren't asking anyone to endorse a political system. They are simply asking for compassion. History shows us countless moments when Americans have extended a hand to people living under governments very different from our own. We've fed the hungry, cared for the sick, and answered the call after disaster because that's who we are, not because we approved of every government involved. Humanitarian aid has always been about people first, and that's exactly what I witnessed in Venezuela. What surprised me most wasn't the destruction or even the resilience. It was the overwhelming warmth. Everywhere we went, people thanked us for coming. They showed genuine affection for Americans. They had no interest in politics. They were simply grateful that someone cared enough to stand beside them in one of the darkest moments of their lives. It reminded me that ordinary people around the world have far more in common than the nightly news often suggests. They love their children. They worry about their families. They celebrate with neighbors, and they grieve together after tragedy. When disaster strikes, so many instinctively reach out to help each other, even when they've suffered tremendous loss themselves. I left Venezuela with a profoundly different perspective. The headlines had prepared me for a political story. What I found instead was a profoundly human one. One conversation has stayed with me. I learned some Venezuelans are still displaced from the 1999 Vargas tragedy, one of the deadliest natural disasters in their history. Over a quarter century later, its effects still shape lives today. It's a sobering reminder. While disasters make headlines for a few days or weeks, recovery is measured in years, sometimes generations. The families hit by this latest earthquake face that same long road. Once the cameras leave and the world's attention moves on, they'll still need safe homes, schools to reopen, jobs to return, and communities to rebuild. We can't solve every challenge facing Venezuela, but we can decide not to forget its people. Whether you volunteer, support your church's relief efforts, or give to a trusted humanitarian organization, your compassion can help ensure this tragedy doesn't become another forgotten chapter in a family's story. Governments may divide us, but human suffering shouldn't. The people I met in Venezuela reminded me that hope is built one act of kindness at a time, and it's my prayer that we'll keep showing up for them long after the headlines fade.